Yeah, so any ideas like regarding a governance action? So there's 7 different types of governance actions that we can quickly discuss. Do you guys think it's beneficial to give an overview of the CIP or no?
I'm a little familiar with it, not completely in all the details, but
Same here.
Okay, well, really quickly, there's 3 governing bodies. There's a constitutional committee, and their main role is just to make sure that the governance actions aren't like they follow the constitution. The constitution is going to be like a living informal document that captures all the values of Cardano. So if there's any governance action that kind of opposes anything in the constitution, they'll obviously object to it. But then for a governance action to be enacted, which means to move forward, it needs at least 2 of the 3 governance bodies voting yes on the governance action. So then the other governing bodies are DApps and stake pool operators. Anyone can be a stake pool operator by running their own nodes. Stake pool operators are kind of like the miners of Cardano. They mint the block, they run the network. DApps could also be any ADA holder. So that means I can be a DApp and you can delegate your vote to me. So when I go vote on a governance action, my vote weight captures the amount of ADA I have and the amount of ADA you have. So both are voting power together. And those are the 3 bodies that either enact, like ratify or not a governance action. So a governance action, there's 7. There's a motion of no confidence. This means that like ADA holders and people just don't believe in the constitutional committee and they want to put them in a state of no confidence, which means like they want to like remove their like say or voting power. And then the other one is new constitutional committee. So this means that they want to either put in and like change the members of the committee because they just don't believe in them for whatever reason. There's updates to the constitution. So they want to add like new updates to the constitution. There's a hard fork initiation, and this is like an update to the entire network. There's protocol parameter changes. So for example, like when we talk about stake pools, some thresholds are like the K parameter, like what's the maximum amount of stake that a stake pool can have before it stops receiving rewards, for example. These sort of parameters that can be updated. There's treasury withdrawals. So obviously Cardano has a treasury that continuously builds. That's where Catalyst is funded from. They're proposing that any ADA holder can put in a governance action to withdraw funds from this treasury as well. And then there's just like any action that requires like just an update on on-chain record or whatnot. So based on these governance actions, what do you think the appropriate deposit amount to submit a governance action should be? The question is, do you think it should be the same for all of them? Do you think some warrant a higher deposit than others? Those types of questions.
And I think for that, what I would think is some of them have drastic changes and can alter the course of Cardano altogether, and some can exclude. And these should be maybe rated higher in terms of a deposit than something, for example, a smaller protocol change. So we can do this separation if you want. And I see like the top 3 being more important because there's big changes, especially this constitution change, for example, where they might decide a constitution change can be just increasing the total amount of Cardano available. If it's 45 billion now, they can decide to take it up to double that for in the future. So that maybe is a big change for Cardano, for example. So things like that could be to limit them from happening over and over, could be really high up, but I don't have a number. I don't know that's the tough part to say is what is a high number in my mind.
So deposit amount should be different for different governance actions depending on the severity of their, like, what's the word? Whatever, that makes sense. That's fine.
Severity of change
So like, for example, 1 to 4, I would say are pretty serious. And then 5 to 7 would warrant different deposits. I was thinking kind of the same thing. But do you think that they should still be, like, in terms of a number, and it's quite hard to think of it as well, because when you're trying to be inclusive in general, but also to avoid spam, like what's the happy in between where not everyone is like continuously spamming with governance actions, but also anyone can contribute and put in a governance action?
I feel it makes sense for people to get paid for this, for proposing a governance. Is it for proposing or doing the action?
Both. Like, it's for you as an ADA holder to put in a governance action, like to put in a proposal, you have to pay a deposit.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
you want to register to become a DApp, you should also put in a deposit. And the way I think of the DApp deposit, I imagine it's similar to kind of like the stake pool pledge. I think the stake pools that have a higher pledge, it's like skin in the game, and it kind of gives them credibility. So I would want to say that a deposit for a DApp should like be enough that it warrants some sort of credibility, but at the same time, it needs to be inclusive enough for people that just don't own a lot of ADA.
Yes, and that I was going to say, like a DApp and might not have a lot of ADA, but might have a lot of good ideas and want to attract people to support him.
Yeah.
And so maybe I might look at it a little different and say, maybe have a smaller and sort of maybe like I look at it as a similar, very similar to a stake pool. You might have a deposit, but then you might have a pledge that you can change. You know, a deposit is you don't have access anymore to that funds. When with a pool, when you create the pool key, you put in a 500 ADA deposit and that's gone, but you still have your pledge that you play around with and you increase as you grow and so on. So maybe we could do that parallel to keep the door open for smaller DApps to start. So it doesn't from day one have just the millionaires or the very high ADA holders become DApps and the aspiring DApps can't.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the DApp deposit should be enough that anyone can become a DApp, and then it's more social after that.
Why should a DApp have a deposit in the first place? I'm thinking it makes sense for an SPO because they're managing the network, they're minting blocks, and they can harm or attack the network. DApps, I mean, why do they need to put a deposit? Why should they lock funds? What's the point?
Good question. I think
maybe one thing I would consider is, let's say a DApp collects or has a lot of representation but does not vote on anything or is inactive. Would that slow down the governance of maybe there's a role, like there's a limit threshold and he's just slowing everything down by not helping getting people to show up. He's always abstaining or not even inactive.
Yeah,
there needs to be repercussions if people are delegating to a DApp that just never shows up or never votes.
I don't know if that should be like baked into the product, like the actual design itself, or that's a social thing where you need to follow up. If your DApp isn't doing anything, just move your funds to another DApp.
Yes, and maybe later on, because there's the rewards, the rewards part might be linked to that.
That's
on the side,
which we can get to. So then we're thinking that governance actions should be not like one for everything. They should be a scale depending on the severity of the action. And the higher the severity, the higher the governance deposit. And then DApp amount, the deposit itself should be enough to warrant like credibility or seriousness, let's say. But then beyond that, it's more a social thing, like a pledge similar to stake pools. Okay. In terms of numbers, I don't know, because even ADA itself is very volatile. So how do we base that?
I think for the first part, the governance action, because it's a serious issue, especially the first war, I foresee that that number should be very high up. And it is a deposit after all, so you're not spending that. It's just you're locking it in, correct? This is what I understand.
Yeah.
But it should be large enough that it's people putting in that deposit and locking it in have formulated a serious
Commitment.
serious proposal or commitment. Yeah. So
Because
go ahead.
I think deposits for governance actions as well. Like if your proposal doesn't get enacted, you get the deposit back anyway.
Yeah.
So
I think I would say
measure-
in the millions, but I don't know how. That's what I would say personally. But it's open.
So for more severe governance actions, deposits to be in the millions. Okay. For DApps, do you think it's fair to have it the same as a stake pool? How much is it for a stake pool? 500?
I think it's 500. Yeah, I think for Europe it should be around that. Even Nadeem, I agree with you with him. It should maybe even be less. Like
Yeah.
the staking key for voting is two ADA. So I would say anywhere between 2 and 500, even closer to the 2.
I personally question the reason why they should put in a deposit. I mean, maybe there's a reason, I just don't see it. I mean, why create this barrier? Anyone can nominate themselves as a DApp, and if they get people to delegate to them, then it's an open market.
And I see one other thing.
Seriousness.
Hello, Mr. Hanania.
So, sorry for interrupting. I just think deposit anywhere, it's not for the value, it's just for the indication of seriousness of the matter. That's all. Like to take things more seriously when they're monetized, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. Maybe my suggestion can
Just
be.
psychological.
I still, yeah.
But also just not spam, I think that's the one thing, because we need to also
Because
remember.
if so many people nominate themselves as DApps and no one delegates their vote to them, then I mean they can spam all they want, right?
Yeah, but also maybe it's to kind of mitigate like how open the open market is, like over choice, maybe just to have like more serious people, so then to optimize the process that way. But I completely see what you're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my suggestion. IOG can take it or not.
Yeah, no, I feel it. Anyway, it's already good.
You put it here, right? Why have a direct deposit? It is a point of view, and I agree, because if there's no risk of any damage a DApp could do, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's. Can any ADA holder put in a proposal for Catalyst?
Anyone with not even an ADA holder.
Oh
can
yeah,
put
anyone in general. See, I think that's fine, but also I think there's this massive problem of vetting, like proposal vetting. So maybe governance action deposits mitigates that issue, because then you really just have more serious people committed to like a governance action putting in a deposit. Especially also when it comes to things like treasury withdrawals, which we'll actually touch on here. But I think all of these go into like the MVG. Anything else you guys want to talk about here? How this exercise is supposed to happen is everyone's supposed to write their own notes, and then we're supposed to group them and discuss them, but we're only 4, so I think this is fine if you're okay with it.
Yeah. If you want, I can write from my side, but you're capturing everything. What do you
Oh, we can just keep doing that then. This is our workshop. We can do whatever we want. Okay. Anything else that we missed here? You guys think that warrants like a conversation?
The one thing I would say on the governance action is if there is a repeat request for the same governance action and it's been voted down, maybe, I don't know how, if it's that possible at all, but maybe when it starts repeating, to avoid it from respamming it in a over a year or two, is start multiplying that threshold to resubmit the same action. I don't know if that makes sense at all. Like I'm thinking, let's say someone wants to, it keeps on, puts in $1 million ADA deposit for withdrawing 50% of the treasury, and everyone's voting against it, but he puts it back every year, and it's again taking everyone's time from the committees and all to review it. So maybe if they vote that this is exactly the same as a previous vote that was done and voted down, to raise that threshold for that. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I think from an implementation perspective, how they're trying to mitigate that is with this question here of action expiration. So like if your governance action didn't go through, how long should how long should it stay active before it expires and you get your deposit back? And I think this is from my understanding of this question is that like, how do we stop a person from resubmitting continuously? What do you think is a fair enough?
Yes. Okay, I see.
But
exactly.
It's because I put $1 million ADA and they're locked and I didn't get voted in. I don't get this $1 million ADA back, which I get, but for how long? So now I can't put in another deposit. Like but in your example as well, I think this could be mitigated on like a tooling layer where maybe, and this is something that we can talk about here that would be awesome, is like having a tool to track these, like to track the data of these proposals and how often they go in and what the result is.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can imagine people are, and that's normal. There's different people with different opinions, but some can be very stubborn and continue on resending again the same request, but it doesn't make sense for everyone. And again and again.
Yeah.
It's hard to stop because then they can change the proposal slightly and propose it again.
Yeah, there needs to be I think they can track who put it in. I mean, that's why it's a tool. I think people who might design this tool will know how to do it, but it could be useful. Okay. We can go back up. Sorry, I just wanted to capture that. But if you guys think we're good here, then we can just move on.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. That's a good question about the DApp deposit. I'll definitely ask more about that. Okay, I think these all go into the MDG too, because they're pretty much all the same. That's whatever, I'll organize it then. Okay, another one is treasury withdrawal. Also, hi, Rudy.
Hello all.
Hi,
Hello, Mr. Shushani.
Miss you guys and ladies.
Likewise.
Okay, so another governance action is that you can put in a proposal or a request to withdraw from the treasury. So they're saying like what limits should be in place for a withdrawal action over a specified time period. So like how often can you put in a request for a treasury withdrawal based on, let's say, anything above 100,000, $1 million ADA or 10 million ADA.
But who can request these treasury withdrawals? It's not clear to me.
Anyone.
So through one of these proposals, like these governance actions can be, for example, I want to withdraw 100,000 ADAs to fund my, almost like catalyst, or what is the?
Pretty much like catalyst. So I'll say, so for example, we decided here that a governance action deposit should be relevant to its severity. So let's say Joanna, I want to withdraw 10 million ADA. I have to put in an agreed deposit of 1 million ADA, and then I justify why I need to withdraw from the treasury 10 million ADA. And then either DREPs and people vote, yes, she can have it, or no, she can't. And Catalyst, for example, would be one of those entities that probably would request treasury withdrawals.
I see. So Catalyst for Fund 11, for example, if this is an action, would say, okay, I want 20 million ADAs to Fund 11, and these are the challenges we're going to do, and so on and so on. And people vote for it and say, go ahead, you can withdraw.
I imagine that's how it would be if Catalyst was still to run and not to be replaced by this.
So yeah, I think in terms of the way I see it is there's a number of input for the treasury fund that's growing, right? It's growing. So anything that is faster than its rate of growth should be slowed down. I don't know how to explain it. Let's say, I think it's 9 billion, not 9 billion or something ADAs.
I'm not sure
right
what
now.
now, yeah.
I think I wrote it down somewhere, but I think, yeah, if it's withdrawing more than what it would accumulate, we should just keep that time extended until it replenishes that amount that will be withdrawn.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it should be a function of what the amount is, I guess, and how much is there in the treasury, and like the rate at which it's being depleted.
Yeah. The way I would write it, if you want, I can write it. It's
What is the process of when someone puts in a proposal? What
So you
happens next?
And then
Sorry?
put in a proposal, you pay the deposit, the governance action deposit that we just, you put in a proposal, and then this proposal goes through a voting period. So I think it's every 5 days, every epoch where it could be enacted. And so it goes through the DREPs, the stake pool operators, and the constitutional committee.
They can't vote very frequently. I mean, it needs to be,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe monthly or quarterly, but the amount, I think, to Amir's point, makes sense that it needs to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Only as much as the treasury has been replenished.
I agree.
Yeah, I wrote that down to ensure that treasury remains sustainable, because I think that's important. If people get, even no matter how famous they are or supported or loved, they can't get too much support that they just drain the whole treasury for one project. Or
I guess also, would it matter like somehow to see how many, like either you limit how many treasury withdrawals from every amount could happen at the same time, so then you can at least know, okay, if we enacted 5, we know 500 up to 500,000 is gonna drain, and then in the next month we'll enable this much. Because how do you know, like, if I put in 100,000, you put in 1 million, Nadine put in 10 million, someone else put in 10 million, we accepted the 20 million, now there's not, like, how, yeah, do you know kind of what I'm saying?
yes, that's true.
So like to maybe time, like box them or something, I don't know, depending on the threshold, then they could happen within this amount of time, but then I don't know how flexible that is.
I think we can write it like, yeah, but it could be like in a safe margin where, you know, for sure, if you accept every maybe it's quarterly. I don't know what the frequency, like Nadeem was asking, but if every 3 months they do a vote that you can accept a maximum of 500,000, like you said, and 2 1 millions, and no 10 million. Anything over 10 million should be maybe done once every year or once every 2 years. And this way you limit the votes, and whoever is targeting to get funded for 10 million or more needs to make sure that's proposed, and he expects that it takes over a year. Yeah.
That makes sense, I think. So then maybe smaller ones would be at a higher frequency than like the larger ones and stuff like that.
And so this time limit or treasure limit withdrawal, is it after they get enacted or before? That's one of your issues that you had, right? So when someone proposes something and his proposal is to withdraw 10 million, he can still propose it either way, and it could be rejected, like you said. So it doesn't affect anyone else's limits, but once it's approved, it might not be funded right away. It might need 6 months or a year to pass that.
You're right. So that's
the
the
limit.
question. Should they be accepted or should they be automatically? I don't know how they would be automatically rejected, but
Oh, just on hold. So it's approved, but waiting for funding. You know, that maybe that's something that you could do, is approved for funding, but it's just
like you're too late.
well, it's approved, but it's on the next batch of withdrawals.
Yeah.
I'll just ask that question here. I'm not sure if what I'm writing makes sense, by the way. If you want to correct it.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Good. Yeah, I think this is as much as I can contribute here, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, it's true. Like, also, I don't know how, if this is possible. So we're saying that the amount, the governance actions for smaller amounts could be like, you can put them in more frequently, but also maybe we can do it that like the evaluation period is longer for bigger amounts. But I guess that's the same thing in a sense. Okay, never mind, scratch
I
that.
think for the bigger amounts and bigger things, maybe they need to go through several rounds. And even if they're approved by the committee, maybe they need to then, if it's a big thing that requires a hard fork, maybe it also requires the SPOs to vote or some other entity.
Yeah, I think actually, Nadeem, they do that. Like, depending on the severity of the governance action, there's different, and we'll talk about it here, there's different thresholds or quorum stuff that needs to be reached in order for something to go through. Cool. I'm happy with this one if you guys are.
Yep.
One thing actually you mentioned, and exactly this might be a risk, not a risk, but if someone wants 1 million ADAs to get funded, and he finds it easier to split it up in 10, 100,000 at a time, but then he gets half of it funded and stops. How do we limit that? But I don't think that was an issue with the treasury. That's maybe something in a different
There would
category.
be a social layer that we just
Yeah.
have to make sure the DREPs are vigilant enough to catch something like this or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Which goes back to like, I guess, or makes us go here with the tooling. Like when it comes to the social layer, are we good to go through past this?
I'm good for myself.
Yeah, so this one's cool because it's like a lot of the things that the protocol layer needs to be like as abstract as possible because it's very hard to like code in all these like specifics, but it's up to the, I guess, like community tooling to shine light or make these processes better. So in your mind, like what tooling do you think is necessary? Or let me ask the question, what tools and user experiences need to exist to lower barriers to participation and make Cardano's on-chain governance easy to engage with? Well, okay, that too, that's a good question. One that I could think of is obviously like the obvious like DREP, like forums, where you can see the DREPs, the amount of votes they have, like anything to do with DREP analysis. That's good. And then maybe this one, the one we talked about, like to be able to easily track proposals and the results and maybe rate them, just have more input on like which proposals went through, which didn't, so you can see if they're whatever, like the things we talked about. Just write this.
Voting from your wallet.
Yeah, definitely wallet support.
Definitely, yes. Yeah. This is
And
you don't need different apps and
Yeah.
different apps and different QR codes and
Wallet support if you're voting.
I was gonna say something, but I'm thinking I'll just write it actually.
Yeah. I think in terms of adoption as well, like we definitely need like a tool that can easily translate to different languages. Or we can use things like, actually, I wrote this as a proposal. I was gonna put in.
Yeah, so I wrote basically the ability to track the progress of the proposals and where the money went. What is the ROI? Initially, I remember in the launch of Catalyst, they were talking about ROI, return on intention. So we as the users should be able to know where this money came from, like where the money went, and did they actually achieve what they promised the community?
You mean DREPs? Or proposals
Is
being
this
or the proposal
all?
itself.
Yeah, everywhere, like all where all the money goes.
Yeah. That's very true. I'm just trying to find, sorry.
I think one more thing, I'll write it down as I explain it, is that maybe have different categories, because maybe a DREP can be focused more on the DApps or some area of Cardano, and someone else, another DREP can be focused more on so anyone coming in won't be shocked by all the different proposals. Maybe he's interested on a social side or interested on marketing side or a technical side. maybe SPOs are more focused on that. So help have a clear categories set up for these governance actions.
Yeah, I completely agree. Something similar to that I proposed a while back is something like now that we have GPT, like a GPT-powered platform for proposal ratification. So something where you can easily create allow non-English speakers or DRAPs to quickly like translate, simplify, summarize whatever they want by like prompting users, prompting the platform to do whatever they want with the proposals.
By the way, there's this thing, sorry for interrupting. There's this thing that I still didn't understand completely. And I think it's POA. I don't know, you guys mentioned it. POA, proof of, I think it's achievement or, one second. Yes, so they sent us ambassadors a message. So basically, I can apply to become, because I'm an ambassador, I can apply to become a reviewer / moderator. And then when I become one, I'll have to submit a proof of achievement, which I think, I don't know if I understood it correctly. It's just like VAs, what used to be known as VAs. And the VAs will verify my proof of achievement. And then there's something called proof of milestone, POM. So there's these new things that, to be completely honest with you guys, I still did not tackle or read deeply and like get to understand deeply. But they're giving the ambassadors also these options of being able to assess the proposals, and then the VAs will assess what the ambassadors have assessed. And I think, I'm not sure, so it's still flew in my head. Sorry to like put in this information in this way, in this unorganized way. I don't know if any of you is familiar with any of these. I'm not sure.
No, I am, and I think it makes sense for something like similar to, for example, DRAPs being able to one, justify, for example, where they're voting, why they're voting to their holders, like a platform to do that, like a forum where DRAPs and their like voters could discuss, plan together, whatever, like more insight onto why these decisions are being made. But for the proof of milestone, and sorry to like jump all around, but this could be a good idea for this here, if it's possible for different amounts to be like bi'atuhum, I don't know the word, like to
Allocated, yeah.
allocate them in terms of like milestones or something. Maybe that's a good thing to add here.
And there's also these levels. So like there's level 1, level 2, level 3 of I think quote unquote moderators, like
yeah, it's true.
So,
like on the withdrawal, it's not only limitation on time, but there's limitations on like you're saying, you're both saying, is milestones or levels. So someone who's just started with Cardano, who hasn't produced or delivered anything, can't go ahead and ask for the largest amount. He needs to build a record for himself or his group. So,
that's a whole other, I wish we could somehow embed, but this is a good thing here actually as a tool to somehow like showcase or be able to explore DRAP reputation or stake pool reputation or people reputation, whatever, you know, like understand their merit within the community so you can best give your vote to certain people. But I guess this falls under the DRAP Explorer. Another really cool idea to incentivize participation or to lower the barriers. We're talking about like, let's say countries where they don't have that much access to ADA, or let's say in 4 years, ADA's at $10. So the newcomers aren't going to have as much ADA as people now. Maybe a tool to help like crowdfund, for example. So they can like put their allocations together to vote on certain DREPs together, or, you know, like a DAO in a sense. What do you guys think? So.
Yeah, like almost like a frequent election. Like you have a mayor in a city, and even if it's a small town or a small city, you can
Yeah,
group all together and have someone voted every now and then.
yeah,
And
exactly.
everyone, like that whole group moves to the new elected individual.
Yeah, like I really imagine DAOs will play a big role here. Like, for example, us as the Cardano MENA community, for example, could pool all of our funds together and elect like a DREP from our community, because rather than split it up, if we can all agree, for example, or let's say, okay, Amir is technical, Nadim is political, whatever, and then we can like come together and elect DREPs from us, and we pool our funds together and we give our votes as a collective. Then that like makes it more, you know, like I think it gives it more power in terms of voting, stuff like that. So a tool to facilitate that would be really cool.
Yeah, I wonder is, for example, if I am a DREP or I give my vote to a DREP, can that DREP vote to a higher DREP? And does it cascade?
I
Or
know that was the case in the DREPs for Catalyst. I don't know about this one here. I don't think there's anything that stops it, but I'm not sure, to be honest.
okay.
But I know there's like the concept of liquid democracy like that, where you can give your vote to an expert, they can give their vote to another
Yeah.
expert, stuff like that.
Because that's what can happen is exactly you can decide this way. And
Yeah.
for every type of decision, that a main DREP who just decides, okay, I'm gonna give my role for votes to this DREP because he knows how to answer these technical questions, then you pull it back and give it to someone else to submit for other categories, if it's governance or constitutional or
Yeah.
treasury funds and related.
Because I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of ADA holders that would want to partake, but let's say I only have 10 ADA, like I know my voice isn't going to be heard, but if I can collaborate with other people and us together come as a unit and have an easy tool to do that, I think that would really drive participation. I mean, I'd love for us to do something like this with our community. But yeah, so that's cool. Can you guys think of any other tools?
I put a marketplace for talent. So whoever proposed to match these proposals with the talent that they need to deliver on the proposals. And you have a lot of people that are looking for jobs in the Web3 space. So it could be like a portal.
Yeah. And DREPs as well. Like imagine if you match the proposer with the talent with the right DREP that will vote for your proposal.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, there's a lot of tools, honestly, especially like if they're saying they're not going to bake identity into this. I think a tool to be able to identify DREPs, like maybe not mandatory, but it would give them a higher chance of getting delegators. That would be a good tool.
I was thinking maybe a tool to showcase people's reputation. Like when a person comes in that has done so much, has been around and has delivered so much to the community, their action or voice should have a much higher weight than a newcomer that doesn't really know anything.
Kind of like the contribution score tool.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to add it here. So you mean specifically for DREPs or for anyone?
No, it could be, yeah, it could be even for proposers as well, definitely for DREPs. Even for voters. I mean, a person who votes that is so active and has, you know, delivered so much good to the community should have a higher weight even for their vote.
That's a good use case actually for the tool we're building.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like I know a lot of people like the fact that there's these the Cardano explorers. Most maybe people look in and see maybe now as the new tokens, what they're worth and all this. But before it used to be what pools, minting blocks and so on. And maybe this is the next evolution is, okay, what DREPs is voting on what, and what wallets are active and what aren't, who aren't, and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, which is also important, the active and inactive wallets, because like what Nadeem was saying, what if my DREP never votes? It's important for me to know if he's still alive.
Yeah, or he cares or not, and well, yeah.
Yeah. I think the whole verification thing is a big thing though as well. Like there's a whole discussion around there's no proof of humanity. So how do I know that I'm not voting to a smart contract? I'm not giving my vote to a smart contract and not an actual DREP as a person. So this is a big thing, and it ties back to the same 1 ADA 1 vote, all of this stuff when it comes to DREPs, especially because there's big room for like gaming, and there's just a lot of like you can really course things. How do we make sure how do we identify these DREPs? And this could be a tool, but people are saying it should be baked into the design and not just like a social layer. I'll just add it here. Yeah, so there's that. I think we actually just have like one more if you guys want to move on.
Sure.
Oh no, there's 2 more actually. But this one, like action thresholds, this one is kind of hard for me, but so what quorum and passing percentage thresholds are required to ratify a governance action? So I think it goes back to like, for me personally, like the severity of the governance action. And then based on the severity, it has to have a higher quorum and a higher threshold. So like you're saying, if it's a hard fork, then we'll probably need like 5 out of 7 with a 60% saying yes or something like that, super majority.
Yeah, but also like exactly like the hard fork might be more technical or more affecting the SPOs. I'm not sure if I'm gonna look at it, the hard fork, is it only for changes in the protocol, or maybe how the actual system works or not? But
hard fork is like complete, like it's a new upgrade to the entire network.
So it affects everyone, right? Okay, but what I meant is there's something that uniquely affects one group, like this motion of no confidence, where you isolate one entity from the different players, then it should be like everyone else should be really supporting that instead of it being a very low threshold. Does that make sense?
Like a super majority, like you need like at least 70% people saying yes. I don't know the numbers, but
it should be maybe 70%
So what they want
from
are
every
specific
group.
numbers?
Yeah, from every group. I don't know if they want, they think maybe numbers or just like ballpark what we think. But you know what's interesting for me as well is like stake pool operators. The end of the day, like I could say I'm voting for a hard fork, but then I don't actually go upgrade my nodes. Like there's no complete like accountability structure there, because I mean it probably won't be for their benefit. So I think like theoretically speaking, if they're voting yes, they'll probably do it. but me, you, 100 other stakeholders can get together, say, oh yeah, we're gonna vote yes, but then none of us upgrade. So it's the stakeholders play a big role in this.
Exactly, they might decide to stop it. So something like that. That's what I meant with the hard fork. If the stake pools are not on board, let's say 10% of the stake pools SPOs are only vote for yes and 90% vote no, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be implemented. So that type of change, it affects them more than anyone else. They need their majority and before it goes forward. And the other part is if you want to this motion of no confidence, I'm not sure what it means, but I thought it's you can isolate or discredit a whole group within this constitution. And it sounds severe.
Committee, like the constitutional committee, you give them a motion of no confidence, means like we want it, like we don't, your vote doesn't say anything, we need to like replace you.
Only for the constitutional committee, not anyone other groups. So they can't just say, okay, we're disregarding DREPs altogether.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, makes sense.
So I guess what you're saying here is like, depending on the governance action and who it affects, then we'll need a supermajority from at least that group. So like, let's say parameters. But I guess like the technicalities of it would be, how do we determine which group? Yeah, I mean, like for constitutional committee, motion of no confidence, all of this stuff, obviously we'll need DREPs and SPOs because they're like they're representing the wider community. So we'll need a higher threshold from them. But I guess, yeah. Okay, I have no idea how to.
So are they looking for actual like numbers for us to run a simulation and say a hard fork should have 70% and something else should have 40% or whatever? Is this what they're looking for?
Issue. Oh, not just the idea of supermajority or not, or if it's adi, like it doesn't really matter, just 51%. Because I think the difference is like, do you just want 51% of people to agree, or does it warrant that more people, like 60% or 70% of the people agree? I think it just depends on the severity of it, like we mentioned.
Akid, but it's hard to put numbers if this is what they're looking for. Like, I could guess.
What percentage as a ballpark?
So
I don't know if you put numbers or percentage, like as a ballpark.
And the other thing is,
yeah, I mean,
how does the vote count if maybe like I'm comparing it to real elections. So there's so many people, maybe sometimes in countries, 80% of the people don't even vote at all. So there's no activity there. How does that count versus if, and there's a majority in the 20% voting, does that go forward, or do they need an overall vote activity first and then the result of the vote?
I think that's what the quorum means. Like, let's say people, we need at least 80 people that are voting, and from these 80 people, we need at least 50% that say yes.
So what quorum and passing percentage threshold are required to ratify a government action? And they're saying consider all 7. So maybe what we should do is I'll write down the 7 types of constitutions in these boxes, and we can just decide on numbers.
Yeah, I would also.
I think Nadim's was asking the same.
I think Nadim just went to, he has a call, but yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, let me take the first one.
Yeah, I think we can also just like group them as well, like after. Here, I can write some as well. So are you starting from the bottom up or? Okay.
From the right. I'm starting from the right. So you have that CIP summary next to you?
Yeah.
Very good.
So I can quickly like. Perfect.
So I feel like the ones here, the ones in the top are the ones that maybe we can group together, and
Yeah, like the serious
the
ones.
important ones, yeah. And this we can put it lower because really just for information. So yeah, if you want, we could say
You
these
think-
top ones.
Do you think update to the constitution is a serious one or not?
I think
It would
I
be,
think from what I understood, there's this constitution are the things that, and this is what I remember reading or understanding, is the things that shouldn't change. Like there's a minimum ADA for to transfer, to make a transfer, or you can't just airdrop, or there's a maximum number of ADAs that are available, or Treasury takes 20% of every transaction fee. These are the part of the constitution. So if you want to update or change anything there, you need.
yeah,
It
you,
could be in the middle, but
in my opinion, I think you need super majority for something that's serious, because it has serious repercussions. Like if it's just 51% and we manage to push something like that, then what's written in the constitution would dictate if other governance actions would be ratified or not, because the constitution committee can say, no, this doesn't work for this, or it doesn't fit with the new constitution update or something. So yeah, I think like serious ones, these are less serious ones.
yeah, and maybe this one, this is to the new constitution. So changing the constitution committee is the people that are running it. Is that
Yeah.
what it means?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, these two, yeah, all these, I agree with you. Then it's fine this way.
You think the
Organized.
constitutional committee to change them needs like a super majority?
No, I would think a little less.
Yeah.
Lower.
You can go with the bottom ones. Or like that, yeah. And then I think we'll just have to say like, okay, a super majority, like a quorum, what's the ballpark quorum percentage? Like, do you think it would be 70% of like 60, 90, 70, 80, or I don't know. I have no idea in terms of numbers.
Well,
But
I think 70% realistically is very hard to obtain.
yeah.
80-90% is almost impossible realistically. So I think already getting 50% is a majority, and 70% is maybe even, I think 70%, 75% is very tough to get. Like, did you look at that small poll they did for the SPOs?
Yeah.
The differences are so small. Like there's not something that where everyone agreed on, and it's not. So it's not. I don't know if 70% is achievable.
I don't know if 70% is achievable. You mean in terms of participation?
Yeah, exactly. For
I
the
would say
quorum.
like 60% is maybe fine, or for a super majority. It's hard, I don't know.
Me neither. Does anyone know, like in Catalyst, how many people vote? Like what's the quorum or for Catalyst? Would you know? Because I would imagine maybe it's 10%. I don't know.
Not that there's analysis. Okay.
Is that for Cardano?
Yeah, I don't think so. There should be catalysts like catalyst voting analysis.
Like,
Anyway.
I remember reading on the main catalyst page, they were saying how many votes were there or how many funded catalysts. This one fund 9. You see,
Yeah.
total votes casted were 400,000, 350,000 votes.
Votes. In terms of ADA or numbers?
I think this is wallets.
Ah, okay.
Um,
5 wallets and yeah, I think it's difficult. But I think maybe it needs
like
to
if you look at every catalyst line, the highest vote, the highest project that got voted in Catalyst 9, total votes were around 200 million for yes, 22 million for no. And there's a little more down here, but I'm around, yeah, 200, maybe half a billion ADA of votes.
wow.
That's the highest, I think, I saw really quickly.
Yeah.
So 500 million out of, I don't know how many is in circulation, maybe 20 billion. So that's not even, yeah, that's
It's not
maybe 5%. So I think I would say quorum, and I might be wrong, but I would say if you have 40%, that's a huge number. That's like super majority. 40% showing up to vote.
And then out of the 40%,
Yeah, that should be high. That should be
like
for
7.
yeah, you can go any number.
But then simple majority, yeah?
Simple majority, I'd say a quorum could be less than 1%.
Wait,
Because
sorry.
if it's not important, yeah, if it's not important, people won't vote for it. But if it really is, they'll show up. And if they don't show up, it's just going to pass.
So less than,
Or what do you
Sorry,
think? What do you think, Joanna?
I don't know. It just scares me to think that, but it's very realistic.
Yeah, because people, they're not going to take action on voting as much as we think people will show up and act, even if there's DREPs, even if there's DREPs. I don't think DREPs will collect. You see SPOs that are retired and there's millions of ADAs and people not moving their wallets, and not because they don't want the money, is because it's not in their radar.
Yeah.
So for these votes where the returns are or rewards are so small, I don't know. I think I would say 1%, but it's up to you. You guys, we can discuss it. It's open.
No, that's very, but out of these 1%, how much do you think should say yes?
50,
51?
51, yeah, like a majority.
Interesting.
I might be wrong, but I see it. I see it as.
So we'll say
I would put higher numbers personally, but obviously it's all subjective. It's not based on anything.
Yeah,
but
put
my
like a
my
column,
thinking
yeah.
process is if voting and at least delegating your vote to a DREP for them to vote for you should be as easy as staking. It's from the same wallet, from the same interface. And today there's about 70% of ADA that's staked.
but Nadim, it's the next step. It's about how many DREPs will actually actively participate in voting.
It should be much higher. We're talking just DREPs here?
Yeah, no, DREPs, stake pools, and DREPs and stake pools and the Constitutional Committee.
Yeah, I would say as much as for the super majority, I would say as much as what's stake today, I would go up to 70 or 60 because it should be that. Sorry?
As a quorum,
Yeah,
like participation.
60. Yeah. Yeah. Because today, 70% of all the ADA is stake. All they need to do is press one more button to delegate to a DREP. That DREP votes on your behalf.
Yeah, but how likely is that DREP to actively participate in voting?
Mafrood, all of them are because they're incentivized to, right?
That's the next question: is what's their incentive?
Yeah.
But for example,
Because if they don't vote, they don't get money. So it's logical for them to vote.
Not for 100% they'll get money. And sometimes I think it's depending on how, it's just depending on the incentive.
Like I was giving while you were on the call, I was giving the example of Catalyst. So I opened the Catalyst Fund 9 and to see how many people voted for the highest voted proposal. And there was about 500 million votes, ADA votes of ADA. 500 million out of
That's nothing.
30, that's nothing. And that's a Catalyst vote that people are getting funding for or whatever, they're getting rewards, exactly the same situation. And don't forget, there's maybe centralized exchanges that have huge wallets. There's people that lock in and cold storage that don't even want to touch, they want to be super safe and not play around with any signatures or anything like that. So they might decide not to vote because it's not worth it. And there might be people that lost their wallets and just it's gone, locked in forever somewhere in a dead pool or something like that. That's why I was saying in the bottom one, the top one I agree, it could that's a range, but in the bottom one, nothing would move if you don't open up for action. The people that care will join in and vote. Maybe I'm
makes
wrong.
sense. No, I mean, it's really subjective. Yeah, I mean, that was my initial thought process. Just thinking that DREPs, their only job is to vote and they get paid to vote and they nominated themselves. Sorry?
Yeah, it's not their full time. The incentives are tricky, right? Because you incentivize them to pay them, but then how do you ensure that their votes are quality votes and they're not just voting because they're getting paid? So you have to kind of also be careful. But then, yeah, that's also maybe why the quorum needs to be a little higher, just in case. Because how do you know active participants?
It's a quorum of not only the DREPs, right? So you have the DREPs, but you have the SPOs, you have the Constitutional Committee. So probably the Constitutional Committee is a group that's going to vote very high. And I agree, it could be a quorum of 90% because they're there, it's their job.
Yeah.
DREPs may be higher. SPOs, maybe not so much. Yeah. And who else is there in the groups?
So as a collective, yeah. How about we say 1 to 10%? It's fair.
Yeah.
But reasoning makes sense for sure. Yeah, so I couldn't really think of too much.
I feel like there must be a more scientific way to reach these numbers that data scientists at IFG should be doing.
I know.
It's cool that they're asking us, but there's so much information to properly do this analysis. But anyway, that's what seems fair and reasonable for us.
That's what I was thinking too. You can run simulations and all this stuff for this sort of results. But anyway, it's a good question. Okay, there's a bunch, but we don't have to go through them all. There's 2 more, really. and then optional ones, which we don't have to. But this is the same question, kind of what you were talking about, Amir, where you were saying like, how can we not stop someone from continuously spamming the same governance action, even if it got not voted in? So they're saying like, if it's not ratified, how many epochs should a governance action stay active before it expires and the deposit returned to the user, to the proposer? My initial hunch was like, if it didn't get ratified, send it back. But then what's to stop them from putting it in again? So I think some space would be good to kind of, as a consequence, maybe, you put in $1 million ADA for a governance action that wasn't well thought of, it didn't get voted in, your funds are held for 2 epochs, for example. Or at least one epoch. But epoch's 5 days, is that enough? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll say definitely needs just as like a note that it needs to be, but how long, I don't know.
So when a governance action, I raised, let's say I have an issue and I want to raise it up as a governance action. I put in a deposit of $1 million ADAs and I say, I want to change this and this. Immediately people are going to start voting for it, or is there a time?
I think there's a time. I think there's 1 epoch before or something like that. I need to make sure of that.
Okay.
But time periods for reviewing and stuff like that. And then I think they can get started. And then there's a voting period as well. But let me.
And then if it doesn't pass for that period, or does the votes accumulate? Maybe I can say, okay, I'm going to keep it open. Is that what this means? It's say maybe I want to open a governance action for 10 epochs and keep the votes accumulating, and then.
No, I think the votes, a governance action gets voted in within a time period, and then it either gets voted in or it doesn't. And this is like, if it doesn't, when should we return the deposit and expire this action?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's one thing I mentioned before, is that if it's a repeat, there should be a multiplier, like to stop spamming. I'm not sure how that can come in, but like holding off from returning the deposit for a longer period, or repeatedly
No, I'm trying.
unratified governance action. Sure, I'm talking out loud.
Wait, so I'm trying to understand something. Since the stake snapshot changes at each epoch boundary, a new tally must be calculated when each unratified governance action is checked for ratification. This means that an action could be enacted even though the DApp or SPO votes have not changed, since the vote delegation could have changed. Okay. So to your question, I'm actually not sure how long a governance action stays active before it gets enacted or not.
Yeah, because it seems to me, if you want to propose something, 1 epoch is never enough, because things can, not everyone's available in that short of a period. So
Yeah.
it should take time. Like maybe there should be election seasons and then other seasons where there's no elections, but there should be a time for people to focus on the election or the changes that are being proposed, vote for them, and there should be a time where there's an off time where people are focused on other things.
Yeah, you're right. I actually, enactments and ratified actions that have been ratified in the current epoch are prioritized as follows for enactment. Successful motion. So governance actions are checked for ratification only on an epoch boundary. Once ratified, actions are staged for enactment. All submitted governance actions will therefore be ratified, then enacted, be dropped as a result of a successful motion of no confidence, or expire after a number of epochs. So what happens is you can put in a proposal, it could get ratified by the epoch boundary. Like they check if it got ratified by the epoch boundary. If not, they'll probably check on the next epoch boundary if it got ratified. And then it
So it
would,
stays there until it accumulates, yeah. Okay.
yeah, it stays there, I guess, till it accumulates the right quorum threshold stuff to either be enacted or not. But then how? Like, what if it was just there and people found it later and voted and then it just, then all of them will get ratified, no? Like there should be a time limit, I think.
No, because don't forget that there needs to be a majority too. So
Yeah.
let's say they got the quorum, but 51% said no to the vote, and so it gets rejected.
Oh yeah, right, yes or no. And for enactment, it's certain ones. So the first three, motion of no confidence, new committee, update to the constitution are immediate. Hard fork and protocol parameters are on the next epoch boundary. Treasury withdrawals and info is immediate. Enacted after they get ratified. So I guess, yeah, you're right. Like if they were voted no, then they should just expire. Should it depend as well on the severity of the governance action?
I don't know.
Because what's the goal of like expiring it after a number of epochs? Like I think the biggest consequence is the proposer doesn't get their deposit back.
The other thing we can do is maybe it's like smart contracts or these NFT tokens. They can put in a what do you call them? Like an open. It's unlocked a period where it gets locked forever. But this is the other way around. So it is someone who raises up a governance action can put in manually. He can dictate how long it takes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for it.
Say, okay, I'm raising this governance action. I'm going to put 1 million ADAs, and I'm willing to keep it open for 7 epochs a year. And maybe someone else is in a rush and wants to get a yes or no field, like a poll, and say, okay, I'm going to keep it up for 3 epochs and see what people say and get back my money.
And you're right, but I couldn't see anywhere where they just stay open to be ratified. For some reason, it doesn't make that much sense because let's say I put in a governance action. Like, yeah, I guess does it wait till it gets the required voting thresholds and quorum? Yeah, maybe.
Can we not give the proposer the option?
That's what Amir was saying.
Yeah.
You know, these
That
policy
makes
IDs that get locked for NFTs, or they can say, okay, I'm going to mint 10,000, all the details of an NFT or a token. They can keep it unlocked for a certain amount for a date. So it could be the other way around. Say, okay, I'm going to lock in my deposit for this governance action until a certain date, and then that's it. It's automatically expired because, and if it does before get approved, then it's great. It moves forward. If it does get rejected before it come on, that's great.
Yeah,
Because it could be a very hot topic and everyone will vote very quickly. It could be a very boring topic that
no one.
just sitting there, but it's also important enough for someone to put a deposit.
Could we have a fee where the proposer would pay to extend it to a new voting period?
Well,
And
I think what's happening is there's no voting period. It stays open till it either gets ratified or not. And in the case that it doesn't, when do we send the funds back to the proposer?
yeah, maybe there should be an X amount. Let's say typical is 3 months, whatever. And then everything beyond that, you would need to pay a fee, and that fee goes to the treasury. So you decrease it from being spammed. Only the people that really believe in their proposal would be willing to pay that small fee to keep it live.
Yeah. But it's not about keeping it live, I don't think. It's about like if it was voted no, Like it just didn't, like no one voted for it. When do we expire it? Like when do we send the
Oh,
proposal?
when the voting is over for that
Yeah.
request, when does it return?
Yeah.
In that case, yeah.
Some people say immediately, like my first initial reaction was, if I put a proposal, it didn't go through, let's give me my funds back right away. You know, like what, it didn't go through. But I think the consequence is like, because it didn't go through, maybe I need to kind of suffer a consequence of my funds being locked for a little bit of time.
Why?
So I don't put it in right away after, or I don't know, maybe to think about it a little more next time. That's what I do. Let's
Yeah.
maybe ask it as a question.
But it says here, how many epochs should a governance action stay active before it expires?
Yeah, if it's not ratified.
If it's not ratified.
That's what I think it means.
So if it's not ratified, it should expire immediately, but the deposits is the question, right? Everyone agrees that if it's not ratified, then it should expire. The
That's what I
governance action.
meant. Why is it active? So what's the purpose of not expiring it immediately?
Yeah, maybe it's worth bringing that up actually to the group.
And then what's the purpose of not returning the fund? Because you're right, I think it should expire immediately, but maybe wait to return the funds for like 1 or 2 epochs. Or the amount of time it took for it to not be ratified is the amount of time it will take for it to be returned. I don't know.
Maybe they should hold the deposit as long as he gets for as long as he gets no's. So if he gets 100% no's, it should be extended indefinitely. And if it's
You never put in a proposal again.
I wonder if these deposits people get staked on it and they still have weight on it, or they lose complete control. Where does that money go for these deposits? Do they go back to the treasury?
They go back to the person.
No, I mean, when let's say someone puts in $1 million ADA as a deposit, where does that deposit go? It leaves his wallet.
I think just smart contract. I don't know. I'm thinking. Because it's his funds, like I don't know if they would
Probably a smart contract. A time-locked smart contract.
Okay. So I just said like it should be variable depending on the severity of the governance action, which is based on the quorum, whatever, hold their funds longer. If it was like a stupid governance action, whatever, hold like maybe just 1 epoch is fine. So this way the consequences.
Yeah, it's like a slashing, right? So you want to we don't want to slash and take their money away, but there should be something where there's a consequence of not taking this seriously enough or continuously going against what most of the people want.
Exactly. And that's why they're holding their deposits, which means it'll stop them from putting in another proposal if the deposit is large enough, which let's say was said dependent. So I think a common theme here is everything should be variable depending on the severity of the governance action. Okay.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'll add, and maybe we could put it here, and I think maybe the Constitutional Committee, maybe it's too much power for them, but I think they can have maybe a direct say, or someone needs to, a group that needs to have a direct say and say, well, you know, we decided in a quick vote, in a smaller quick vote, that this is a negative acting person, so we need to slash him or hold off, you know,
hard to do with
initiate. It's harder to do.
It's hard to do with no like clear identity or like tracking system.
I see.
That's, I think what's
But
lack
if
a lack of
but
account-
this constitutional committee, their role, what is their role exactly? What do they do?
Their role is pretty much to also vote, but they have to vote. Their vote is based on if an action like doesn't follow the constitution.
That's all they do. Can't they also look into these little details of, okay, well, we've seen these repeated or negative actors coming in with these proposals. Now we need to kind of,
I mean, in a way, yes, but in another way, it'll centralize the process. So it's the concept of how do you not centralize it to, like, they already have enough vote power in a sense that they can, like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's about like decentralizing that and not. That's why the accountability structure is hard, because who's going to hold who accountable? We don't want like a centralized place. So that's why I think community tooling or like people should hold their DREPs accountable. DREPs should hold the proposal, like things like that should be kind of naturally implemented somehow.
yeah.
Cool. Well, there's one last one and then I'll give you guys some time back. But this is really fun. Okay. So DREPs incentives, should DREPs be incentivized? And if so, how much and how should the payments be managed? I think this is a tough one.
I find that the catalyst portion is like very good in terms of the people that are the proposers that ask for the money. There's a portion of that money that goes for the people that voted and the people that assessed the proposal and so on. And so I think that same breakdown should happen for DREPs and be included in that. I really
Yeah.
think so.
That's a really
I
good idea.
agree.
But the thing is, it's only the treasury withdrawals that has anything to do with money.
No,
As a governance action.
well, then we can tie like there's the treasury withdrawals, but there could be a treasury withdrawal for all the other actions and say, okay, well, we've ratified 17 governance actions this epoch, and we voted on such and such. So, but how much? That's the question. Yeah, there's
That's
no.
a good point. That was raised as well. Like people say, DREPs should pay themselves so they can put in a treasury withdrawal request. That was an option. Some people say DREPs shouldn't be incentivized. I mean, I think they should be incentivized. It's just hard to say how much because there's a monetary policy as well. I think like how much is, if there's like 300 million DREPs, how are we going to afford all of them? Or it would scale, I guess, depending on the treasury.
Maybe it has to do with the percentage, like a small percentage of all the proposals that they voted on and got approved.
Yeah.
So if they voted on proposals that are worth X amount, they get a 0.00% whatever, a very small one, just like voters get for proposing in Catalyst.
Because there's no amount except for a treasury withdrawal for a governance action. But it could be like a function of how many, like let's say at the end of 3 epochs or whatever, depending on how many proposals you said yes to that actually went through, then you get paid, otherwise you don't. But also, is that fair? I don't know. And then another thing to be careful about, if we're making the incentive really high, but we discussed about making the deposit very low, then we're gonna like, how do we vet DREPs? How do we manage the amount of people that want to just put in votes and become DREPs and stuff like that?
So now on the current votes that happen in Catalyst, is that like the same order of magnitude we're talking for DREPs? So it's just related to how much they have in their wallet and it's a small amount? Is that what people like you think is acceptable? I'm asking, do you think it should be more than that? it should be there like a full-time, like enough to be a
Yeah,
full-time job.
DREPs is like a full-time job. Because realistically, as well, it could be like, imagine if you have to read through 500 governance actions every day. Okay, not every day, but like, you know, you want to be for that somehow. But do you? But then my thing is, then I like models where like you get what you put in, kind of thing. So then you're incentivized to do more. So if we could do it somehow like that, like base it off of how many proposals you vote for that actually got enacted, or how many things like that. Maybe that will also force people to work together better. I don't know. Reddit is an option, but
I don't mind that if they voted on something, but my fear is if they only get rewarded for the ones that get enacted,
yeah,
means they always vote yes. They'll have a skewed
that's true.
issue. But if they voted on it and said no, they still should get rewarded either way. If they
You're right,
voted
like,
against or for.
I guess like how I should have framed it better is like if the outcome was the right outcome, like if you matched the right outcome. If you voted no and everyone else voted no, yes. If you voted yes and everyone else voted yes, yes, you know.
But again, then you'll start voting based on what the majority of people are voting, even if you think internally or the people you're representing understand it otherwise, no?
Yeah, I guess that's when like, I don't know here also, I don't think you know the results till after, but still, I guess everyone can say, let's work together and vote yes.
For example, or they're on Twitter, okay, the majority estimate is for this really good, cool idea, but internally it might not make sense, but he just wants the rewards and he'll just vote because it's a majority, it's a popularity contest. I'm not sure, I'm just asking.
No, it's right.
How should it be broken down?
That makes a lot of sense.
I think it definitely should be related to how much ADA they have representing. Maybe that's number one, right? It should be proportional to their representation value.
Yeah.
So someone who's a DREP for 1 million ADA is rewarded less than someone who's a DREP for 1 billion.
Yeah.
Or 100 million.
Even though sometimes it's not like it is a popularity contest that way, but I guess that's healthy competition. It's kind of like the stake pool model.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's still important, but maybe there's a minimum they get. So it's like coming back to the same model as stake pool and a min fee, but
I wish there was the minimum for stake pool rewards. Regardless if you're minting blocks or not, you get something. We don't.
Yeah.
So I guess, proportional to representation makes the most sense, even though it eventually becomes also hard to compete. It's like the stake pool problem. Like once you get too big, you can run several DREPs.
But there could be an upper limit. Maybe there should be an upper limit and say like at most you get 1,000 ADAs, or you can put whatever number you want.
But then that causes the same stake pool issue where they're incentivized to split. But that's more effort as a DREP to split.
Exactly, and then you have less control on your vote outcome. So regardless, a real big DREP, someone who has 20% of, I'm exaggerating, but 20% of all active ADA doesn't care anymore about this reward. He's actually caring more about the outcome of these governance and making sure that Cardano is thriving and growing.
Yeah.
Maybe I have it wrong, but
well, like people are saying, and DREPs are people that are intrinsically incentivized to work for the system, so they can either pay themselves or get rewarded somewhere, like somehow. So leave it up to the social layer. But I don't know about that.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of the DREPs are going to be pool operators, are going to be DApp operator, Web3, like they're going to be people already working within Cardano earning something on this. I don't see this as someone who's doing this full time and nothing else on Cardano. That's my issue. So I would imagine a very successful SPO can also be a very successful DREP, and can also potentially be on the committee at the same time.
Yeah.
So already a big famous SPO is already earning a lot, and now you add on the DREP, whatever they earn, and then again. So I think there should be some rewards, and the other thing I think is
Don't do it.
the rewards for the people that repped him should also get rewards
Yeah, that's
that match his rewards.
yeah, like the stake pool thing. So distribute voters. Another one is like, yeah, people are like, you think, or the DREPs, it's just a social thing where you can charge your voters to vote on their behalf. But not that voters would like that, but you can set your own, like, build enough merit and whatever, then it's like a service.
You set your fee. Yeah.
The money eventually is coming from the treasury, right?
Yeah, if it was to be from the treasury, yeah.
So maybe it makes sense to have 0.05% or a small percent always set for DREPs.
No, regardless of how many DREPs are in the system.
Yeah, and then it's shared proportionally based on their number of votes, the outcome of the votes, the percentage of voting stake to them.
And
that's good because that incentivizes them to keep the treasury healthy.
Yeah.
Because if the treasury is sinking down in total value, their rewards are going to start dropping down as well, which is, I think, very good.
Cool. How should the payments be managed? I don't know. Yeah, probably from a treasury, like automatic withdrawal, or through a governance action as a treasury withdrawal, depending on which one.
I think one thing that I hear often is it should happen almost immediately. We're comparing the SPOs are it's really good. You know exactly what you're going to get in the next 10 days, and that's it. It's set in an equation, and you can forecast for it. But on the catalyst side, the assessors and all this, there's always a period of like a month where they're just constantly asking and wondering how much am I going to get, and it just comes in as a big surprise at the end. Yeah. So maybe I would lean towards it being clear and almost not immediate, but fast rather than long and unclear. Yeah, predictable, exactly. Even if it's small or big, it's just, okay, I did my part, I'm going to get 5 ADAs. Okay, perfect. I did my part, and once this gets ratified, or I did my fair share of work, I know what I'm going to get with them. Yeah, predictable.
Not necessarily money or amount.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing I thought of, but I think it might not. I think this creates more problems. Is, you know how there's a governance, every governance action has a deposit that gets returned, either if it gets enacted or not. What if a small portion of that, of the DREP's incentives came from that? But then,
yeah, I think that's fair.
The outcome.
That's fair because someone needs to fund the votes and the governance, and if people are raising up ideas, I think that's a very good idea.
But do you think, like, because I'm taking a percentage of, like, I'm almost paying for voting, but I'm paying for it anyway as part of the deposit. So it doesn't matter. It's not like I'm like coalescing people to vote for me or not, because it's a fixed fee that comes out of my deposit anyway.
For all governance, yeah. I think that's a really good point. And which is great because now when you have a big deposit, you're going to get a lot of attention from DREPs and you're going to get a lot of attention on ratifying it or going against it. Doesn't matter anymore, but they should. There's going to be a higher quorum because, well, the bounty or whatever that amount is higher.
Yeah, and I mean like the small percentage of the deposit amount for the governance action could go into the treasury, and that will tie into what Nadeem said, like that would be the fixed percentage from the treasury that's always for the DREPs. So everyone that wants to put in a proposal also has to think twice, like I'm putting in a deposit, but when I get it back, there's a percentage of it that's going to go away anyway. So it's just something. Okay.
No, it's actually, I didn't think about it at all this before, but it makes sense. It makes sense.
I think it might be a good, I mean, I'm sure we're missing some of the nuances, but it would be cool to raise it. Cool. Well, I think this brings us to the last bit. Well, these are optional, whatever. These are like things we would have done as a group, but like just in terms of observations, implications, next steps, like if there's anything that, you know, you observed, like anything that, you know, if it has any implications for you or what you think and what you think.
Yeah, one thing Nadeem and you mentioned, and I agree with now, is this is great that they're asking us to do this and do this workshop and get answers, but it's really important to go with a specialists or like a political science major with simulation and economics major, not just anyone or a group of people.
I mean, they've
raised these questions.
They've definitely done their due diligence. They have researchers and game theorists and stuff. Like I was in the workshop with them, but I think there's like deep analysis that could be made. You can just run simulations. So I'm working with a group of people that are working on another draft to maybe run these like simulations or just experiments with quadratic voting versus not and stuff like that. But yeah, it just seems like maybe it's on purpose that they're leaving it up to the community to do stuff like this and come with answers. I don't know. At the end of the day, also, yeah, off record. But we don't know what the I don't know what
the outcome is gonna.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's one observation I have. I think.
So
and maybe it goes against being a decentralized, because I agree, like you don't want, this is not run by one group, and so maybe that's their counter argument again with it, is that yeah, this is decentralized. And
but then again, if you go and run a simulation with clear data and numbers, that's way easier to justify to the wider community than just to say from conversation, this is what we thought, or this is what we think.
Yes.
Like a more scientific approach, you know? But hopefully maybe it's some of the community members that would try to do these things. Like
I feel like, and I hope at least, they've done these, they're just wanting to see with the community what seems fair. What are their expectations? Maybe, you know, things that they haven't thought of.
So another, I'll tell you guys as well. That's my observation, is like DIDs and identity and how to add that into this to play a huge role. I think Kenrick, this one guy I work with, mentioned that he talked to Dor or someone that was like one of the initial creators of this proposal in Voltaire. And they said that the identity was a part of it initially, and then they removed it because someone said like, you know, like the community fall back or something, but then they just didn't discuss it very much. But I think for a proper governance, I don't know, I think identity needs to play a big role in this and how it's implemented.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, let's see. The preferred tax avoidance system.
You want, well, if you want to talk about the compensation for the constitutional committee, is it similar to DREPs or not? Just really quickly, it can help add one more piece of information, or it's up to you.
I have no idea about the constitutional committee, to be honest with you.
Can you repeat, Amir, what you said?
You know, Anna, I was thinking there's the other group, other than the DREP, there's the constitutional committee. Should they
Yeah.
also be compensated for their time, and how?
There's
I would
not
say equally, sorry,
There's not much about the constitutional committee
there's not much information, you mean?
information. Which I think they need, and that's an observation. Like, I think
Yeah.
there needs to be more because they actually have a lot of power if you think about it. Like,
Exactly, they're just,
but are just to overthrow them.
I think for me, the way I see it is that they're like elected officials for a certain period of time, and that just say, well, whatever's coming through, does it follow the Constitution or not? Based on their interpretation. Still, they need to be compensated.
Interpretation, semantics. It's like religion.
Yeah.
You know, like how do we? But yeah, I agree with this one as well. So yeah, next steps for me and you, Amir, I guess we can consolidate both our workshops together and then report back. And then in the workshop, I'll raise some of these questions and maybe I'll share this also. I'll stop recording now, but I'll share this recording. Oh, sorry, I should stop sharing this with our community.